What's up, fantasy people? This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and Banjo, the dog, coming at you live from my garage. And this is the Fantasy Footballin' Show. Today's episode, Week 18, Fantasy Footballin' on a budget. So this is our waiver wire show on a budget because, I tell you how much of your fab to spend, but hey, there's a lot of people not even playing fantasy football anymore. So I'm assuming nobody has any fab. If you want one of these players, spend it all, please. And before we get into this episode, I do want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the defensive player from the Bills last night. I can't remember his name exactly. I should have wrote it down. But man, I literally saw that play and I got super disturbed. And I did pray with my wife because playing sports, which I played a lot of, and it's like you just get hit in the wrong place and then you could die. It was crazy stuff, man. I did not like it whatsoever. I'm sure nobody else did. I hope that he is okay. And there's been a couple of examples of this. One was the Prober, which is the guy hit in the chest with the slap shot, hockey. And he ended up having a Hall of Fame career. And then there's another example of this. It was a college player, football player, and he's, still has to be assisted breathing. So there's a huge spectrum of results here. So just take time of your day and just send positive vibes to that guy. Sorry, my dog is barking at me. Stop. Also, if you could just take a second and give us a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, tell us something that you don't like about us, make us feel real bad. It'd be sweet. Shout out to our subscribers. I think it was oh man, a real Chad. God, dude, it was so funny when I saw it. Oh, something Chad. I need to write these down. So I'll give you guys proper shout outs next episode. I'm just kind of getting yelled at by my dogs, and I've got a lot of stuff to do before in the next hour. So anyways, let's get into this, guys. And the first player, you're gonna be like, dude, nobody has, but hey, dude, he's still available in 30% of leagues. Let me grab this real fast. That's it. That's all you get. No more. No. He's got a ball and he wants it thrown repeatedly on repeat. Tyler Allgeier, 17 plus carries last 3 games with a touchdown in 2 of the 3. He went 20 for 83 and a touchdown versus the Cardinals last week, which is a sweet matchup. Cardinals, And he does have to play Tampa Bay next week. And Tampa Bay, I think that's clinched the playoffs. So pay attention to see if Tampa Bay is going to be resting everybody. Tyler Allgeier could just go off, dude, like one of those last games of the year type of stuff. And now I just remembered actually something else I wanted to speak of about that game last night. If I was a manager and I had the championships hanging on this game, I would want those two people to discuss, see what they had left and how realistic it was for them to lose or win. And I would want both of the players involved in the fantasy championship to be okay with the results. But if I was in the championship and I saw somebody die like that almost, I'd be okay with taking the L if it was reasonable. So you could go by projected points. There's some things that you could go by, but just be reasonable. And if you were down by 50 and you just had the kicker left or something crazy, let the other person win because, hey, man, life is fantasy football is super important, but life is more important. Okay. Next up, James Cook had 2 carries for 18 yards. Devil Singletary's 1 for 3 yards before the game got canceled last night. He is my fantasy football MVP. He is the reason why I'm called Big Turd Ward because I laid a big turd. So I thought. Actually, no, I did because he's not even in the fantasy MVP runnings, dude. Not even close. It's not even close. So I did lay a big turd there, but you can see the talent. And if they just gave him more opportunities, dude, the end of last year when the Bills were running the hell out of the ball, James Cook would be such an important player in that, but just has not came to fruition this year. But next year, I'm all about it. But they do play New England next week, so that is a tough matchup for everybody on the Bills. So if you have your Bills in the championship next week, which sucks because it's week 18, whatever. Don't expect many points, especially because the Bills might be shutting it down, dude. I mean, after this week. Zack Moss, the main man for Indianapolis since Deion Jackson fumbled 2 games ago. If you remember that, he fumbled the end of the half. And it was all Zack Moss. And it was all Zack Moss last game, all Zack Moss this game. So he had 15 carries for 74 yards against the Giants defense. He's a good bet for rushing volume going forward. And they get Houston the final week. So they're going to run the ball a lot versus Houston. So Zack Moss, if you're looking for 90 total yards or something, you can pick him up. And then, running backs are super thin this time of the year, super, super thin. So just if you are in the championships this week, pick up all the handcuffs, dude. Jordan Mason, Jordan Mason is Christian McCaffrey's, Gary Brightwell's, Saquon Barkley's, Madison, Alexander Madison for Cook. Any other handcuffs that you can think of. Next up, wide receivers, Treylon Burks, second on the team in targets last week versus the Cowboys with 8. That only turned into 4 receptions for 66 yards. But he also had a rush for 20 yards, and this was all with the QB Dobbs, who is infinitely better than Malik Willis for his receivers. And he'll get 2 starts in a row. But the thing is, he has to go against Jacksonville, and that is for all of the marbles. One of these teams are not making the playoffs. This is for the wild card. So a huge game. I do like Treylon Burks. I would start him in my flex or low end wide receiver 2 this week in the championships. If your championships so happen to be on the week 18, which sucks. I'm going to keep on saying that. Next wide receiver up, Richie James, averaging is for the Giants. I mentioned him and Isaiah Hodgkins last week. Hodgkins did catch a touchdown, but I'm just going with volume here and targets. So Richie James I like more, averaging 8 targets a game over the last, and has 2 touchdowns over the last 4. Went 7 for 76 with the touchdown this week against the Colts. And they are taking on Philly in the finale of the season. So Philly's probably going to be packing it up. And, they're going to be starting Gardner Minshew probably. They just had a terrible, was it that Sweat or whatever? He just had a terrible injury. So if these teams are making the playoffs, dude, they're packing it up. And they're going to have, what would be a bad matchup. Might be a really good matchup. So Richie James, I like. Jahan Dotson. Got to give my the Banjo the ball, man. Got to keep Banjo happy. He was on a 3-game TD streak going into last week, but then he got some Carson Wentz on the plate. Nobody likes Carson Wentz. Nobody's going for seconds of Carson Wentz. And guess what, dude? He has to get seconds this next week because Carson Wentz is starting week 18. But he did lead the team in targets with 7, and that only turned into 37 yards versus the Browns. They are playing Dallas next week, so that's a divisional game, rivalry. If they do play Wentz, it's not good, but that's what they said they're going to do, so I believe it. And but Jahan Dotson is worth a dart throw, flex if you're looking for a wide receiver or some big points, low floor but high ceiling in your final week. And then KJ Osborn, dude, Vikings fan, man, right here. He's taken over the Adam Thielen role. He is the slot receiver. He's getting all the targets, catching all the touchdowns. Literally, this is what Adam Thielen used to do. So, where am I? Second on the team in targets with 7 this last week versus the Packers. That turned into 7 for 59 and a touchdown. He has taken over that role. He's got 3 touchdowns over the last 4 games, and he plays the Bears in the final week. So, I'm liking KJ Osborn, man. Wide receiver 2 status right now. I like KJ Osborn. If you watch him play, you're like, is that Dalvin Cook or KJ Osborn? They're super fast. High agility. And then this is a big one people have been talking about for a week or 2 now. Rahid Shaheed. So, Chris Olave was the rookie for the Saints that you really wanted, but here comes this guy, Rahid Shaheed. Olave's been kind of dealing with a hamstring injury, apparently. Shaheed led Saints wide receivers in targets this last week versus the Eagles with 6. He caught all of them for 79 yards. And so they play Carolina next week. And I really like the Saints defense going into this game. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for their offense. And, hey, man, ride the hot hand. Rashid Shaheed, you can that's a low-end wide receiver, too, right there. Tight ends. Speaking of the Saints, Juwan Johnson led Saints in targets this last week versus the Eagles with 7. That only turned into 5 for 62. He has not caught a touchdown during the last 2 games. If you know anything about Juwan Johnson, he's a touchdown machine. So I'd be betting on a touchdown in the final week, especially versus Carolina. So, playing Carolina, and you can bet on a touchdown more than likely. And he's getting targets, too. So if he's getting touchdown upside and all the targets, hey, man, that's a good deal. Next up, Logan Thomas led team in targets with 7 with Wentz back. if you know anything about Logan Thomas, he actually does well with Carson Wentz last year, but he always gets injured. He's a super athletic tight end. Been waiting for him to break out for a long time. He never has. But he, led the team with targets 7, turned into 6 for 56 versus the Browns this last week. They played Dallas the very last week, and he had 8 targets the week before last against San Francisco. So, 7 targets, 8 targets. Carson Wentz was there. There's a history there. You can start Logan Thomas. Trey McBride, man, the second-round rookie for the Cardinals, taking over for Zach Ertz. Led the team in targets with 10 this last week for Atlanta. That turned to 7 for 78 and a touchdown. He is like a hyper-athletic tight end. I think one of the top tight ends in this last draft. He is David Blow's favorite target. So if David Blow, check to see if he's starting again this next week. And if he is, dude, go grab Trey McBride and start him. So check to see if Colt McCoy is it. If Colt McCoy is in, you can still start him, but I would much rather have this Blau. They look like they had a really good rapport. Now, quarterbacks, Jared Goff. He's probably not available, right? But hey, if he is, you can start him in your championship. It's not really a lot I can say about that. He's thrown for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards in 3 of the 4 last games. He just threw for 255 and 3 touchdowns versus the Bears this last week, and they're playing Green Bay next week. And Green Bay's defense did look pretty good against my Vikings, but man, the Vikings, that whole game was just like thrown off, dude. You can just throw that game out, man. It was, what was that? Special teams kickoff return into a pick 6 into just snowball. And then here we go. Jarrett Stidham threw for 365 yards and 3 touchdowns with 2 picks versus the number 1 San Francisco defense last week. And he plays the Chiefs in the finale. If you're watching that guy, he makes good throws, on-time throws. He's got great weapons now. Waller's actually healthy. He likes Waller, threw a touchdown to him. And Devontae Adams makes anybody better. So if you want, 300 yards, a couple touchdowns, throw in Jarrett Stidham at the end. He seems like a good play. And then lastly, defense, New Orleans with Lattimore back. You just saw they just shut down Gardner Minshew. They get Carolina at home next week with Lattimore. So if Saints are out there, I'd be all about starting that Saints defense because Lattimore makes a big difference. So anyways, this is a little bit shorter this week. Not as in detail, but dude, nobody's really playing the championships this week, but I just wanted to go ahead and put out some names out there for you guys to pick up just in case there are. And we will start our, rankings for next season and our fantasy playoffs scenario stuff with our next videos because we are in a fantasy football playoff league, which a lot of you probably are too. And, we'll talk about that until the Super Bowl. So, but I do want to get my rankings out while it's fresh because do yourself a favor and do your rankings now and don't listen to all the crazy BS over the offseason, man, all the hype trains and everything else. It really messes with your mind. You can make something right now and it could be pretty reliable next year, just depending on trades and offensive line issues and stuff. So thank you so much. And we will see you. I will catch you on the flip side.